just witnessed the handing over of a generous donation of 20,000 doses of the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine.
It was a kind donation, as India understands that it is important for us to be able to ensure that the entire world is free of COVID-19, and the only way we can do that is through vaccination.
We welcome these additional doses because it would help us to provide a significant coverage, a greater percentage of our population in terms of vaccination against this virus.
And just to note that St. Kitts and Nevis is also paying forward, and we are going to assist the government and people of Grenada by donating 2,000 of those 20,000 to the people of Grenada. And so once again, we just want to thank the government of India, and remember, don't wait, vaccinate. Today we're at the Newtown Health Center, where we've had the official launch of the COVID-19 vaccination program. We are so pleased to have had quite a cross-section of individuals who were represented here today and taking the vaccine. We had members of the cabinet, we had persons from the medical fraternity, doctors and nurses alike, and we've had quite a number of other persons from the clergy, from immigration, from police, you name it, they were all here to take their first dose of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. And so we all got our COVID-19 vaccination card to indicate that we would have taken our first dose of the vaccine. Once we come back in 10 weeks, we will have our second dose, and then once we got that second dose, then the cards would be stamped at the front with the Ministry of Health stamp, and that is to finalize that you did receive both doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. A reminder that the vaccine helps us to ensure that persons do not have severe illness or death, and so we're encouraging persons to step forward and take the vaccine. Get all the facts that you need to get. The Ministry of Health provides all of the information. The facts on the vaccine are on the covid19.gov.kn website. And so we're asking you and urging each and everyone to come out and get your vaccine. Look at the information, get all the information that you need, whatever makes you comfortable. But I can assure you that we have all taken it so far, and I'm feeling good. My arm is good. It was a vaccine, and so I'm excited about that. And so I'm looking forward to my second dose to say I'm completely vaccinated for COVID-19. And as the science continues to evolve, I'm sure we'll find more information and more benefits as to why you should take the COVID-19 vaccine. But for now, I know that since I've been vaccinated, I lower the risk of me getting severe illness or death from COVID-19. I also know that I'm protecting myself, my family, and my community. So I'm asking everyone, get the facts and then get the vax. Today was an example that it is safe, and we urge each and everyone, when it's your turn and your stage come around, to get vaccinated. As we progress, we will provide more information as to the next stage and who will be next. And so look out for that information from the Ministry of Health. We'll keep you informed, we'll keep you updated, we'll let you know how many persons have been vaccinated, and we'll let you know when it's your turn that you can make your appointment calling 311 or any of the health centers. So go ahead, get your vaccination.
Thanks to the nation's unified response, the spread of COVID-19 has been contained. St. Kitts and Nevis, therefore, announces the opening of their border on October 31st, 2020. The success of this strategy requires effort on everyone's part. People from all walks of life must keep practicing social distancing. Maintain a separation of 6 feet or 2 meters indoors and 3 to 4 feet or 1 meter outdoors. If this isn't possible, masks must be properly worn. Businesses can provide hand sanitizer, conduct temperature checks, record customers' contact information, and manage crowds. Clean and sanitize high-touch areas regularly. Dividers or staggered seating can be used to maintain proper social distance. This protects workers and customers and prevents the spread of disease. We all have an individual and collective responsibility to avoid large social gatherings. These types of gatherings are deemed as super spreader events. Taking disease prevention seriously will enable a worry-free return to normal life.
Thanks to the nation's unified response, the spread of COVID-19 has been contained. St. Kitts and Nevis, therefore, announces the opening of their border on October 31st, 2020. The success of this strategy requires effort on everyone's part. Therefore, self-health management is an important step in this process. Self-health management refers to the measures people take to manage their own health. You and I should remember to wash hands often with soap and water, or use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Avoid touching your eyes, mouth, and nose. Take your temperature morning and evening. Watch for symptoms. Persons with diabetes or hypertension
Welcome to this edition of Leadership Matters. My name is Jacqueline Bryan, your host this evening. And this edition of the program is being held just days before International Women's Day, which is recognized on March 8th annually. And this evening, Prime Minister, the Honorable Timothy Harris, is joined by three phenomenal women from the civil service. We had one of them with us last week, and she is back, but they are just a few of the phenomenal women who work in the civil service to make this country work. So this evening, his special guests are Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health. We have Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Hilary Hazel, and Chief Executive Officer at the Tourism Authority, Raquel Brown. So I'm sure that they have exciting presentations for you, and the ministries and departments that they represent, of course, will indicate that they also have important updates for you as well. But at this point, we're going to break and show highlights from the past week, because we had two significant events over the past week. The first being the launch of the rollout of the vaccine, and the second was the handing over of vaccines from India. They were gifted to St. Kitts and Nevis, and we received them just yesterday. So sit back, relax, and we're going to have a quick break, show you those highlights, and when we come back, we'll tell you how you can participate in the program, and we'll hear from our guests.
Today we're at the Newtown Health Center, where we've had the official launch of the COVID-19 vaccination program. We are so pleased to have had quite a cross-section of individuals who were represented here today and taking the vaccine. We had members of the cabinet, we had persons from the medical fraternity, doctors and nurses alike, and we've had quite a number of other persons from the clergy, from immigration, from police, you name it, they were all here to take their first dose of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. And so we all got our COVID-19 vaccination card to indicate that we would have taken our first dose of the vaccine. Once we come back in 10 weeks, we will have our second dose, and then once we got that second dose, then the cards would be stamped at the front with the Ministry of Health stamp, and that is to finalize that you did receive both doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. A reminder that the vaccine helps us to ensure that persons do not have severe illness or death. And so we're encouraging persons to step forward and take the vaccine. Get all the facts that you need to get. The Ministry of Health provides all of the information. The facts on the vaccine are on the covid19.gov.kn website. And so we're asking you and urging each and everyone to come out and get your vaccine. Look at the information, get all the information that you need, whatever makes you comfortable. But I can assure you that we have all taken it so far, and I'm feeling good. My arm is good. It was a vaccine, and so I'm excited about that. And so I'm looking forward to my second dose to say I'm completely vaccinated for COVID-19. And as the science continues to evolve, I'm sure we'll find more information and more benefits as to why you should take the COVID-19 vaccine. But for now, I know that since I've been vaccinated, I lower the risk of me getting severe illness or death from COVID-19. I also know that I'm protecting myself, my family, and my community. So I'm asking everyone, get the facts and then get the vax. Today was an example that it is safe, and we urge each and everyone, when it's your turn and your stage come around, to get vaccinated. As we progress, we will provide more information as to the next stage and who will be next. And so look out for that information from the Ministry of Health. We'll keep you informed, we'll keep you updated, we'll let you know how many persons have been vaccinated, and we'll let you know when it's your turn that you can make your appointment calling 311 or any of the health centers. So go ahead, get your vaccination.
Thanks to the nation's unified response, the spread of COVID-19 has been contained. St. Kitts and Nevis, therefore, announces the opening of their border on October 31st, 2020. The success of this strategy requires effort on everyone's part. People from all walks of life must keep practicing social distancing. Maintain a separation of 6 feet or 2 meters indoors and 3 to 4 feet or 1 meter outdoors. If this isn't possible, masks must be properly worn. Businesses can provide hand sanitizer, conduct temperature checks, record customers' contact information, and manage crowds. Clean and sanitize high-touch areas regularly. Dividers or staggered seating can be used to maintain proper social distance. This protects workers and customers and prevents the spread of disease. We all have an individual and collective responsibility to avoid large social gatherings. These types of gatherings are deemed as super spreader events. Taking disease prevention seriously will enable a worry-free return to normal life.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters. My name is Jacqueline Bryan, your host this evening. And Leadership Matters is a program through which the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, updates you on matters of national importance. And you would be aware that recently we've had quite a number of things happening, and this is one of the ways in which he keeps you informed. Of course, the program also allows for you to pose questions and make suggestions. So it gets pretty interactive, and we are happy to be here with you this evening. We're going to begin with the presentation from the Prime Minister, and he will be followed by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, the Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and finally the Chief Executive Officer from the Tourism Authority. So without further ado, we'll hear from the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Jackie. My fellow citizens and residents, welcome to another edition of Leadership Matters, an informative, interactive public forum where we discuss matters of national interest. We do so in the finest tradition of democracy and accountability. We in leadership open ourselves to constructive engagement with members of the public. The big news this week continues to be about our vaccination rollout program. The successful launch of our COVID-19 vaccination program last Monday continues to dominate the news. increasingly so as our public education program gains momentum. Success has many faces, and indeed persons from all walks of life and every strata of society, from the head of state to the ordinary folks, understand the urgency of us getting vaccinated. From a turnout of 70 last Monday to over 340 plus persons today, we have vaccinated to date a total of 1,355 persons. I anticipate an even larger turnout as we expand the number of health centers delivering the vaccine jabs. I want to encourage everyone to get vaccinated. As I said yesterday, when I received the supply of 20,000 doses of vaccines, courtesy the Government of India, vaccination programs put us further along the path to recovery. Vaccination will allow more things to happen safely, more economic activity, and eventually economic recovery. My government's focus in 2021 is on economic recovery, and we want, of course, to do this safely. The emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our economy and every aspect of life here in St. Kitts and Nevis. In the early days of this pandemic, policymakers around the world tried to determine the shape of the recovery. Prospects for the global economic recovery were either optimistic or pessimistic, with some projections including a longer downturn and eventual return to normal, that is, the U-shaped recovery, or a deep recession followed by a long and slow recovery, the L-shaped recovery pattern. Nonetheless, the prolonged impact of the pandemic continues in 2021, affecting countries at varying levels. For St. Kitts and Nevis, despite the estimated deep contraction in economic activity in 2021, the economic outlook is forecasted to be modest, with an estimated growth of 5.5% in 2021 and 5% in 2022. As I mentioned in my budget address, for the 2021 fiscal year, we devised a fiscal strategy for the medium term, 2021 to 2023. One of the objectives is to facilitate recovery and reignite the economy by adopting a pro-growth approach to the development and execution of the capital budget for 2021 and beyond. We expect that the key sectors that would drive our economic recovery would include construction, manufacturing, agriculture, ICT, and services, including tourism. Notably, construction activity, which generally contributes about 16% of our GDP, would be positively impacted by ongoing projects such as the resurfacing of the Island Main Road and other residential construction. The construction of other major projects, including the solar farm, the New Bastia High School, and health centers around the island, is also expected to contribute to the projected growth in 2021. Private sector construction activity, and in particular residential construction, will be significant this year. My government is making every effort to make a notable contribution to rebuilding the economy by continuing to provide support to various sectors through the provision of tax incentives and other financial and policy-based support. Examples of these would include the First-Time Homeowners Initiative, whereby duty-free concessions are provided on materials each year. Up to February 2021, duty-free was provided on residential building materials totaling $4.6 million. Tax exemptions on building materials and equipment were also provided for larger non-residential projects. We have the Government Employees Mortgage Program and the Citizens Mortgage Facility all being executed through the Development Bank. With respect to the agricultural sector, this year we propose $15.8 million to boost production and ensure food security, the allocation of more lands for the farming sector, and the waiver of payments for the consumption of water by farmers. In terms of support to the small business development, the government will this year inject $5 million for the continuation of the Fresh Start program to provide access to capital to fund small and medium-sized business projects. We have also continued the stimulus offer of a reduction of the unincorporated business tax rate by 50% from 4% to 2% until June 2021. Tax exemptions have been granted also to many small businesses. We were heartened to see that the number of business licenses continuing to grow. For example, for the first 2 months of 2020, 143 business licenses were approved. For the same period, 2021, that is 1st January to the end of February, 183 business licenses were approved. In addition, we anticipate that the following policy options would further help to drive the recovery of the economy in an equitable and sustainable manner. In the short term, we of course have been investing more in vaccines, and we encourage persons to get vaccinated. This of course would boost consumer and investor confidence. There will be special focus on implementing our capital projects that are funded by external grants and those that would boost economic growth and productivity. We will continue to ensure prudent management of public funds by containing discretionary expenditure, and we will provide additional funding to support the Poverty Alleviation Program, the Severance Fund, and to sensitize the public on available social assistance programs. We will continue our investment in our health systems, including the construction of health centers and the renovation of our main hospital, the Jane France General Hospital, to ensure the delivery of essential public health services. We shall see the modernization of the public sector using more efficient ICT systems. We will employ more digital technologies in the education system, and we will see the use of digital transformation to improve access and quality of our public services, as well as for disease surveillance and outbreak response. There are several other initiatives which my government will be implementing in the not too distant future. Some of these, I am sure, when the Financial Secretary speaks tonight, she would address. Finally, of course, I want to indicate that on Monday, when we received the 20,000 doses of vaccines, we put St. Kitts and Nevis in the forefront of efforts to ensure that we achieve herd immunity. I would want to call upon each and every citizen and resident to go out tomorrow and the days ahead to ensure they are vaccinated. The stakes are very high. Your safety, your protection, your life is at stake. So please do not hesitate. Please go and be vaccinated. I am pleased tonight to have with me 3 panelists. We have Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris from the Ministry of Health. We have Mrs. Hillary Hazel, Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and we have Ms. Raquel Brown, who leads our effort at tourism development. From the presentations that will come, I'm sure you will get a better understanding of where the country is heading, and of course, the role that you can play to ensure that we sustain the recovery, the economic recovery of our country. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. We will now hear from the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bryan. Good evening to everyone viewing and listening to this presentation. Firstly, permit me to congratulate ZIZ on its 60th anniversary and to wish the entity many more years of success. I grew up with ZIZ being a media staple in my life, and even with the evolution of the media, it has certainly remained an essential source of personal inspiration. I am indeed honored and humbled to be part of tonight's discussion alongside our illustrious Prime Minister, as well as my esteemed colleagues in the Ministries of Finance and Tourism. The focus of my presentation tonight is the continued rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, in response to the coronavirus pandemic, subsequent to the successful national launch on Monday, the 22nd February 2021, which aligns with the theme mentioned by Prime Minister, COVID-19, St. Kitts and Nevis on the path to recovery. With our goals being to mitigate outbreaks and transmission of the virus, to protect the vulnerable populations, especially the seriously ill, and to minimize the impact of the pandemic on our health and socio-economic systems. The Ministry of Health is indeed very optimistic that these goals can be achieved with the support of citizens. It would be remiss at this time if I do not publicly commend all our residents and citizens who have been complying with the non-pharmaceutical protocols of meticulous and frequent hand washing, respiratory hygiene, wearing of masks, and physical and social distancing, which have been advocated by our healthcare team to combat the virus. Thank you for your enduring power as the Federation combats and awaited a safe vaccine. We expect, however, that you will continue with the protocols until you are advised of any relaxation. In addition, I must commend the staff of the Ministry of Health, particularly the members of the Health Emergency Operating Center, HEOC, nurses and doctors, and other frontline health workers for their expertise, dedication, and commitment in managing the virus thus far. I thank you sincerely. It is clear that our Federation has done well in combating the virus, with only 41 confirmed cases of COVID-19, 1 active case at this time, no death, and no community spread. But ladies and gentlemen, the fight is not over. The battle is still raging. We have to turn the corner. And with the statistics revealing approximately 50 million persons in the Americas are infected with the virus, it is imperative that we protect ourselves, our families, and certainly our beloved Federation. I am very pleased at this juncture, therefore, to assure the populace of St. Kitts and Nevis, that our health system have been prepared for the quality rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. But of course, having spent over $14 million in resources, we expect no less. In fact, within the Federation, we have already a best practice mechanism, the National Immunization Program of St. Kitts and Nevis, with over 96% immunization rate, which is the envy of many countries. It is upon this existing, tested, proven, and good governance system that our COVID-19 vaccine plan is based for the effective administration of vaccines to citizens within the stipulated age group of 18 to 80. The program includes vaccine procurement, storage and distribution, and administration under validated cold chain conditions, as well as regular immunization training of designated staff. Undoubtedly, vaccine is not a new concept to our country, and one can conclude with a federal childhood immunization rate of over 96%, our citizens are accustomed to vaccination. It is well known that through the power of vaccines, our region has eliminated smallpox, polio, rubella, and measles. With COVID-19, it will be no different. Safe and effective vaccines will help us turn the tide of this pandemic, but only if we can reach a large number of our population, no matter where they are, no matter where they live. And we will still need to establish and maintain public health measures of testing, contact tracing, quarantine, physical distancing, hand hygiene, and masks until the pandemic recedes. So, fellow citizens, we now have the COVID-19 vaccine, the Oxford AstraZeneca Covishield, which we are rolling out. And yes, it is free of cost. Although there were considerable investments, $250,000 to transport it to the Caribbean. We presently have approximately 19,000 doses of the vaccine in our central store, and we expect to receive additional amounts, at least 21,000 doses, through our procurement from the COVAX facility, the global mechanism working to ensure equitable access, which I am informed we will receive in the next few weeks. In addition, the ministry is exploring other avenues to access safe vaccines. It is important to note that the role of our public health system is to mitigate against morbidity and mortality caused by infectious disease at the population level, and vaccination does that. And St. Kitts and Nevis continues to partner closely with our regional partners, CARPHA and PAHO, to ensure our efficient rollout. Our vaccination plan therefore includes a comprehensive, robust communication strategy to guide the education campaign to inform the public and generate the expected demand for the vaccine. No doubt you would have noticed that such a campaign has commenced, utilizing traditional and digital media to disseminate the relevant content. There are many awareness education sessions. You saw the large gathering at Ross University last week with a broad cross-section of entities, and the ministry is continuing to educate actively and aggressively within the community with effective facilitators such as the CMO and Chief of Staff, doctors, and other members of the ministry's health promotion team. In fact, my presentation tonight is an element of this strategy. I will now briefly describe the process of vaccination. We are presently offering the COVID-19 Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine at the Newtown, Bastille, Tabernacle, Sandy Point, Old Road, St. Paul's, Keon health centers this week at 1 p.m. daily, Monday to Friday. Commencing at 1 p.m. is a strategy to ensure that all public health services are provided during the morning period, and there is focus on the COVID-19 vaccine administration during the afternoon. As such, the ministry is encouraging persons who are interested in the vaccination to go to the nearest health center and make an appointment for the vaccination. In fact, by next week, we will be building out the vaccination at all the health centers, all 11 health centers in St. Kitts. So just walk in, be vaccinated, or make an appointment to do so. I remind you that the vaccine is free of cost. Persons are expected to complete a checklist prior to receiving the vaccine to ensure they are fit for the vaccine and to provide data for tracking the vaccination administration. The COVID-19 Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is administered by medical professionals as an injection of 0.5 mils into the deltoid muscle of the upper arm as 2 doses. The second dose is given 10 weeks after having the first dose. And it is important to return for the second dose to complete the vaccination process. The vaccine will not be given if the individual is allergic to any ingredients in the vaccine, and like any other drug, a history of allergic reaction to any other vaccine or therapies must be reported to the healthcare provider. Pregnant women and lactating moms are excluded from the vaccine. After vaccination, persons are asked to wait 15 minutes to monitor for the occurrence of any immediate adverse reactions, and the vaccination record card or certificate would be stamped and issued to the person and should be secured safely by the individual. On receipt of the vaccine, each person is given a list of possible post-vaccination side effects to look for and a contact number to call to report side effects as they occur. Therefore, I submit that the process is seamless, and I can assure the public that all relevant logistics and storage chains are in place for the vaccine, as well as an established mechanism to track and trace all doses of the vaccine as they move through the system. Of course, you are aware the ministry has already augmented its staffing with the input of staff from Cuba. And at this time, I am very pleased to indicate that in our further quest to bolster the human resource component of the vaccine rollout, several of our patriotic retired community nurses have come forward to assist in the vaccination rollout. I use this forum to urge others to come forward as we engage in our mass vaccination exercise. I am also pleased to inform that there are adequate amounts of syringes and needles to administer the vaccine. In conclusion, I wish to assure the population that the COVID-19 vaccine safety surveillance and pharmacovigilance mechanisms are central to our vaccination rollout. The safety of the vaccines and consumers is also paramount to the Ministry of Health. The vaccine was developed by a reputable entity with history of safe vaccine, so there is much confidence in the safety of the vaccine. So don't hesitate, vaccinate. It is your right, however, to ask. In fact, we do have a high literacy rate, So we expect citizens to ask questions and perhaps be somewhat hesitant. Nonetheless, I trust you to follow the science and be informed by the data. The statistical data are showing that it is a good thing to be vaccinated. And I am sure you are aware from global statistics that with the vaccination, there are now significant decreases in COVID-19 illnesses, hospitalization, and death. Isn't this a good thing? Citizens, no one is safe until everyone is safe. I wish to commend all who have taken their vaccines thus far. Thank you for your keen and enthusiastic sense of safety and protection of self and country. And for those who have not, while you may hesitate just a bit, do not prolong your wait. Vaccinate. It is not a rush for the vaccine, but an urgency to save life. I urge you to disabuse yourself of the false sense of security and make vaccination a priority. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris. We will now hear from the Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Hilary Hazel.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening to Honorable Prime Minister, colleague panelists, listening audience. With the approval of vaccines and the rollout of vaccination programs across the globe, there is an increasing optimism for global economic rebound and positive growth to return to most regions of the world. In fact, in January of this year, the IMF released growth prospects for the entire global economy. Global growth is expected to reach around 5.5% by the end of 2021. In the United States of America, it is expected that that region will grow by 5.1%. This is essential for us here in the Caribbean. Closer to home, Latin America and the Caribbean region, we're expected to grow by 4.1%. And for us here in the Federation, you've heard it from Honorable Prime Minister earlier this evening, that the estimate is for the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis to grow by 5.5% in 2021 and 5% in 2022. This is consistent with all the projections made by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank for the ECCU economies, which are expected to return positive growth in 2021. It is also anticipated, however, that the tourism sector would continue to be slow, with prospects for better performances in 2022-2023 tourism season. There is still relatively high levels of uncertainty as it relates to the prospects for recovery. The prospects are much more improved, however, for 2021 as opposed to our experiences in 2020. Taking a little deeper look at what's happening in the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis, we are expecting, as you've heard earlier, that the negative experiences we've had in terms of the construction sector, which saw a negative 16.5% growth in 2020, we're expecting now for 2021 a rebound of this sector, which will grow by 8.9% and thereby contribute in the vicinity of 14% to our GDP. The financial intermediation sector is expected to grow by 2.9% and contribute around 12% to GDP. Our real estate and business services sector is expected to grow by 2.8% and contribute around 10% to GDP. Public administration in 2020 was the only sector to experience positive growth, around 3.8%. In 2021, we expect this sector to grow by 4.3%, again contributing around 10% to GDP. The education sector, which also includes our offshore education facilities, would be expected to grow by 5.1% and contribute around 8% to GDP. In terms of our economic recovery and transformation, the pathway rests heavily on our ability to have both government and businesses, and I would want to add the general public, finding a way to coexist with COVID-19. It would also be determined by how well we continue to prevent or manage the spread of the virus within the Federation. This therefore underscores the wisdom in our government's early investment in vaccines and the strong advocacy of the government to ensure that as many citizens and residents as possible are vaccinated in the quickest time possible. Some critical issues for our consideration includes how soon the Federation would be able to safely resume regular tourism business and welcome both stayover and cruise visitors to our islands. Our ability to get things moving and to accelerate expansion in agriculture, manufacturing, and the development of small business would be crucial. How soon would we be able to make notable inroads to the digital transformation of the government and private business? The readiness and willingness of the private sector to invest in our country. We also have to consider the strength of the financial management mechanisms of the government, which must include measures to sustain a stable fiscal environment, stimulate economic growth, economic transformation, and maintain adequate social safety net systems targeted at the most vulnerable members of our society. The areas of focus, therefore, would be critical as the crisis offers many opportunities for us to accelerate important reforms. The overarching goal, therefore, has been accepted and currently being worked on by the government, and therefore is embedded in our 2021 budget. And a number of our public entities have also embraced it and have set plans in motion to achieve better results over the medium term. The strategic direction of the government is to support recovery of the economy and to sustain that recovery anticipated in 2021 into the medium and long term. An important element will be to improve access to reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy sources. This, we believe, could be achieved by pursuing opportunities for increasing alternative sources use of energy. The most important project at this point in time from the government's perspective is the solar farm that is soon to be developed by Skelec. The government would also have in its arsenal the review of the existing legislative framework to support additional investments in renewable energy. The private sector and private individuals are also encouraged to seek out opportunities for integrating renewable energy, such as solar energy, into their daily use. Implementing reforms and the various plans necessary for digital transformation is of optimum priority. Our experience with the impact of COVID-19 leaves no doubt that the government is on the right path when it launched its digital transformation strategy. Work is ongoing within government, and some elements of the digital transformation agenda would be rolled out by the cable during the course of this year. The government has also adopted, as you've heard earlier from the Honorable Prime Minister, a pro-growth approach to the development of the capital budget. During 2020 December, the National Assembly approved a capital budget of $192.7 million, of which over 70%, $141 million, would be used directly to impact the construction sector. So, in summary, we are going big on construction. To date, some projects that were rolled out from 2020 are progressing towards completion, and others are moving from the design phase to implementation over the coming weeks. We anticipate that these investments, along with private sector investment projects planned for implementation, would help to boost the construction sector and deliver positive growth, provide employment, and improve overall our physical infrastructure. Another critical element of our strategy to assist with economic recovery is the leveraging of the platinum brand of the CBI program. We also intend to continue supporting the development of the agriculture sector and manufacturing. In terms of the agriculture sector, support for agriculture is important for boosting food and nutrition security of our country. The agriculture sector is fully supported in the current budget to continue enhancements in the production capacity of the sector. There are multiple objectives, which include lowering the food import bill, creating employment and business opportunities for our people, and, as said earlier, enhancing the country's food and nutrition security. To achieve success, we have to work to overcome the challenges that have impacted the sector for many years. These include outdated and inefficient production methods, which leads to high costs of production and high costs of produce, the lack of adequate irrigation and other important infrastructure. Lastly, destruction of crops by pests such as monkeys and other feral animals. The commitment of the government, therefore, extends beyond the resources spent in 2020 as part of the stimulus program. The commitment also expands beyond the resources earmarked in 2021. The commitments are also extended to a commitment to continue the modernization of land use policies, tackling predial nasally, and intensifying pest control. We are also on the move to improve the technical support to farmers, promoting investment in water infrastructure to support crop production, embedding the use of technology in farming and fishing in the Federation, promote buy local, eat local at the national level. There is no way of securing good results in terms of stimulating economic recovery without giving continued attention to the active plans for human resource development and legislative reform. This evening, I would end on a similar note to the last time I was invited to join this discussion on leadership matters. And that is to say, it is clear that actions that the country must take are numerous, and the government cannot be expected to do it alone. The private sector would have to play a significant role. There is also a role for each individual citizen and resident. At the government level, we have identified some of the key initiatives to be implemented in order to support economic recovery and transformation of the Federation. We believe if the private sector, the public sector, can join together to implement a realistic program of action, St. Kitts and Nevis, the St. Kitts and Nevis economy will rebound to positive growth by the end of 2021 and also to sustain that growth over the medium term. Thank you for your kind attention.
And thank you for providing us with that important update. We'll hear now from the Chief Executive Officer at the Tourism Authority, Raquel Brown.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the Honorable Prime Minister. I have the honor of hopefully providing some confidence for those of us who are in the tourism industry. For the last year, for many of us, it has been extremely difficult time. The travel and tourism industry was the most hardest hit throughout the world because of the global pandemic. At the end of 2020, when the borders opened for many destinations before us, we opened our borders on October 31st. We saw many destinations open as early as June, and for many of us in the tourism industry and many of my stakeholders, they were very antsy and they were what's happening. We've seen many evolutions of what has happened. We've heard of bubbles. We've heard of cruise tourism restarting. However, our protocols, and even though we were the last independent nation in the Caribbean to reopen, have helped us to be in the position that we are in now to help us to promote tourism and travel again to St. Kitts and Nevis. We're not gloating. However, it is important for us to share with the world that sees St. Kitts and Nevis about what we have to offer. But before we do that, we have to educate them on how we've managed the pandemic. And to the help of our CMO and to the task force, we've managed to have no deaths, no clusters, and no community spread. And with only 41 cases, it is a very it's an extreme accomplishment. And last week, Minister Grant and I were on a call with cruise line partners for the Eastern Caribbean, including Jamaica, and everyone was quite shocked at how St. Kitts and Nevis, our other tourism cruise partners, we had managed and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. What was sad as they gave their updates, every other nation, every other country that was on their cases were over in the hundreds. So we must be grateful that we're in the position that we're in. We are quite optimistic. I am optimistic, and so is my team. It doesn't mean that we will not have challenges, but we'll be rebuilding tourism, and it will be a process and it will take time. I will start quickly with cruise, because cruise is going to be the one that is most dependent on the vaccination rollout. To date, the CDC and the Biden administration in the United States, they have not moved forward with test cruises that were to start this month. However, we wait and we hear what they have to say. But what is clear is that there is one cruise line already, and it is Crystal Cruises, and it is one of the most high-end cruise lines. They do come to St. Kitts. They've come to St. Kitts in the past and to Nevis. They have already indicated that they will require all cruise passengers to take the vaccine. So we see that in the marketplace already a demographic of cruisers are going to be required to do this, to have the vaccine. Cruise, so we wait. We wait to see what happens. We haven't had test cruises yet, which will be the preliminary state for passenger cruising that they hoped would have started sometime March, April. However, we wait to see what happens, but we do know that the vaccination rollout is going to be very essential, and it is going to help in building out itineraries that St. Kitts and Nevis will share. For stayover tourism for air arrivals, we opened in October, and we know that we've had visitation, but only about 25% of those persons were vacation in place, international travelers versus quarantine for returning nationals and residents. However, what is important to note is that the persons that are coming to St. Kitts and Nevis, from the information we have received, is that where they do stay speaks to the demographic of Four Seasons, the Marriott, and Park Hyatt. So those persons are very intrigued by the destination, even though we still do not have the numbers that we had previously. They chose St. Kitts and Nevis because of the travel requirements. Some of them have said it was very strict, but when they got here, they said, oh, this is why. So at the end of the day, as we move forward into Q1, we thought it was important for the first quarter of 2021 to speak through PR to get the word out about how we had done over the last 3 months. And over the last I would say over the last month or so, Minister Grant and I have been doing interviews with very esteemed media persons who can get the word out about St. Kitts. Minister Grant has done an interview with eTurbo News as it speaks to the destination, and it goes over both Spotify and SoundCloud, which is beyond the traditional Facebook and Instagram mediums. But what was important was that we reached persons as far as South Africa, and they were interested in the destination, not just for tourism, but for also persons who would like to buy a second home or thinking about relocating. We've also done interviews with traditional Caribbean journalists. However, one of the most important things is that when we do interviews with journalists, we do not decide what their header or what they're going to decide to write about. They ask us questions. And in the first destination coverage that was done through Caribbean Journal, the header was St. Kitts and Nevis Model Tourism Reopening. And it had a lot to say, not just about us as a destination, but what is important was that it also compared with what was happening in other Caribbean destinations and how we managed COVID-19 to date and how we're mitigating it for international travel. Also, Travel Weekly, which is very well known for the travel trade, we were given the headline, A New Definition of Success in St. Kitts. It spoke to our travel protocols, what was happening on the destination, and as we reopen. In just 1 week, Travel Pulse featured St. Kitts 3 times and recognizing us for our management of COVID-19. They had headings such as Protocols, Ignite Tourism Relaunch, Safest Destinations to Visit in the Caribbean was the most recent one published on the 21st of February. So what is important is that the destination is not just getting publicity, but who we're getting publicity with in terms of journalists. And most important, yesterday, the Forbes Travel Guide published an entire feature on St. Kitts and Nevis with advice on where to stay, where to eat, what to do, and what to see. And many persons in our demographic read Forbes magazine because it does speak to wealth, it speaks to investment, it speaks to what's going on in the demographic that comes to St. Kitts and Nevis. Also, the Points Guy, he features us later actually today in an article about the best beaches in the Caribbean, and St. Kitts was featured. So what we've been trying to do is to have a very heavy PR plan for Q1, and we hope that as we continue to do that, we were hoping that the vaccination rollout would continue in our source market. And as we've seen that, we saw today that President Biden is rolling out additional support for additional vaccinations to move up from July to May for most persons in the United States to receive their first vaccine. So what this has been saying over the last couple of weeks with the development of, the rollout of the vaccination is that there's been consumer confidence. Persons are feeling safer to travel. And so we believe with the PR that we speak about and the vaccination, we are hoping on April 1st to do our first active promotion in the marketplace, supported by PR, but having an offer for the destination to promote St. Kitts and Nevis. I'm currently in discussions with our hoteliers, so I don't want to get into details about it. But what is important is that we'll have a universal offer. Persons will be seeing the destination through Spot TV and other digital marketing channels. And it will not just be our traditional feeder markets. We're going to focus on feeder markets such as Montana, Kansas. And the reason why I say that is because in the month of February, we launched as a part of our PR plan, Retie the Knot photo contest. And I know it sounds very simple. However, persons who would like to win a trip and come to St. Kitts, and they would win a trip by submitting their photo and give 75 words why they should be chosen. The trip is, the reward of the trip is to come to St. Kitts in November to attend the group vow renewal that we're hoping will still take place. And vow renewals are a very popular thing for persons who have been married for more than a year. If you're married for 50 years, if you're married for 4 years. And we've seen from this contest just alone, we're picking up persons in those states such as Montana, Kansas, places like Idaho, places that we've never really had quite a big reach for St. Kitts. So what is important for us is that we're building out our PR for Q1. In Q2, as we see consumer confidence rebuild, we're hoping for stayover visitation to be incremental. And we know it's still rebuilding, so we know the numbers are not going to be as significant as they were in 2019 or 2018, but we're pushing the destination and we're ensuring that we have a long travel window and a long booking window to encourage persons to book so that they don't have to feel that they're pressured to book now and then if something happens and they cancel. Flexibility is important in this promotion that we're doing, and so we'll be pushing that between April 1st to September 5th when the promotion was running. Thereafter that, we will focus on Q4, which is the winter, and all indications based on the rollout of the vaccine and consumer confidence for the US market is indicating that there's pent-up demand for travel in our demographic. And so it is important for us to be ready in the marketplace to promote the destination in Q4. So for us, we're optimistic. I'm not saying that it is going to happen overnight. It's rebuilding tourism, but we know if we rebuild tourism, it has the ability for not just the traditional sector such as our hotels, but our non-traditional sector such as our Alarub vendors, our primate vendors, our craft vendors, persons who have found another source of income to become dependent on over the last 5 years with the increase of tourism. So I say to everyone that is in the tourism industry, I ask you to please take the vaccine. It is essential for rebuilding and continuing the reopening and lessening the restrictions for tourism so that we can have more visitors come to the destination. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raquel Brown from the Tourism Authority, Chief Executive Officer. We've had 3 important updates from 3 very important ministries. Of course, they're all important. However, at this particular point in time, we know that the focus has been on these 3 ministries, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Finance, and of course, tourism. At this point, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we've heard from our presenters. That's when we hear from you. Give you the numbers and the platforms on which you can share your information or ask questions, and we definitely will open up the phone.
I will take the vaccine because building defenses against COVID-19 is a team effort, and we are all a key part of that defense.
I definitely will be taking the vaccine when it's my turn.
I will be taking the vaccine as it is an important tool in the fight against the pandemic.
It is important for me to vaccinate to ensure that if I do become infected with the disease, it can prevent hospitalization. In addition, it also helps with herd immunity.
I will take the vaccine to protect myself, my loved ones, my clients, my co-workers, my community.
St. Kitts and Nevis, why do we need to vaccinate? Kenisha? So we can jab COVID-19 away.
Thanks to the nation's unified response, the spread of COVID-19 has been contained. St. Kitts and Nevis, therefore, announces the opening of their border on October 31st, 2020. The success of this strategy requires effort on everyone's part. People from all walks of life must keep practicing social distancing. Maintain a separation of 6 feet or 2 meters indoors and 3 to 4 feet or 1 meter outdoors. If this isn't possible, masks must be properly worn. Businesses can provide hand sanitizer, conduct temperature checks, record customers' contact information, and manage crowds. Clean and sanitize high-touch areas regularly. Dividers or staggered seating can be used to maintain proper social distance. This protects workers and customers and prevents the spread of disease. We all have an individual and collective responsibility to avoid large social gatherings. These types of gatherings are deemed as super spreader events. Taking disease prevention seriously will enable a worry-free return to normal life. Thanks to the nation's unified response, the spread of COVID-19 has been contained. St. Kitts and Nevis, therefore, announces the opening of their border on October 31st, 2020. The success of this strategy requires effort on everyone's part. People from all walks of life must keep practicing social distancing. Maintain a separation of 6 feet or 2 meters indoors and 3 to 4 feet or 1 meter outdoors. If this isn't possible, masks must be properly worn. Businesses can provide hand sanitizer, conduct temperature checks, record customers' contact information, and manage crowds. Clean and sanitize high-touch areas regularly. Dividers or staggered seating can be used to maintain proper social distance. This protects workers and customers and prevents the spread of disease. We all have an individual and collective responsibility to avoid large social gatherings. These types of gatherings are deemed as super spreader events. Taking disease prevention seriously will enable a worry-free return to normal life.
You would have just witnessed the handing over of a generous donation of 20,000 doses of the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine.
It was a kind donation, as India understands that it is important for us to be able to ensure that the entire world is free of COVID-19, and the only way we can do that is through vaccination.
We welcome these additional doses because it would help us to provide a significant coverage, a greater percentage of our population in terms of vaccination against this virus.
And just to note that St. Kitts and Nevis is also paying forward, and we are going to assist the government and people of Grenada by donating 2,000 of those 20,000 to the people of Grenada. And so once again, we just want to thank the government of India, and remember, don't wait, vaccinate.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters, which is held weekly by the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. And Leadership Matters is aired live on ZIZ Radio and television. It's also aired on Freedom FM, Sugar City FM, Vaughan Radio, and Win FM. In addition to that, it is streamed live on the social media platforms of ZIZ and the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, also known as SKNIS. So you can look for their Facebook or YouTube channels, and you can also view the program there. It is rebroadcast on ZIZ television several times per week as well, so we definitely have you covered. And we also have, this is the segment where you can participate. We had 3 important updates from 3 important ministries: the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Finance, and, well, under the Ministry of Tourism, the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. Representing those 3 agencies are Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Hilary Hazel, Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and Raquel Brown, Chief Executive Officer at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. For you to ask your questions and make your comments and put any suggestions to them, you can dial several numbers. You can dial 466-2666, or the mobile numbers, which are 662-8674 or 767-4765, in addition to the international number, which is 1-239-645-4500. We have 2 numbers on which you can use WhatsApp, and those numbers are 661-5683 if you want to send a WhatsApp message, and 660-7168 if you want to send a voice note via WhatsApp. And of course, we're always monitoring our Facebook page if you send questions there. So we are going to go directly to the phone lines because I'm told we already have callers waiting, and to take our first call this evening. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Hello, good night.
Hello, good night.
Leadership Matters. I want to say good night to the Honorable Prime Minister for continuing choosing Tuesday to be a Leadership Matters, and also for choosing good leaders every Tuesday. I'll go right into my questions. Do you think that we will need to show our COVID-19 vaccination card to travel? Is there any benefit in traveling if you are vaccinated? If I'm coming from overseas as a visitor, would I be able to take the vaccine in St. Kitts? Now, Mr. Harris, Mr. PM Harris, you have made a deposit for some vaccine about a month ago. If by chance we do not use these vaccines, would you be in a position to sell to another country, or you will have to give them away? Also, if we don't reach the required or the maximum amount of persons to be vaccinated, where does that put St. Kitts? Are we going to be in any problems? Because I heard Ms. Raquel Brown speak about persons with the new cruise line, well, not the new cruise line, the cruise line that are kind of upscale will be requiring persons to be vaccinated. So it almost appears that if we don't vaccinate, we might be sort of blacklisted, which might put us into not receiving guests. Have a good night. This is Bucky Garrett and Bucky Alves Garrett. Over and out.
Thank you so much, Bucky, for that question, a regular contributor to the program. We'll take our next call. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Hey, good night, everyone. This is Alva Pemberton. First, I would like to reiterate my unwavering support for our Prime Minister for the splendiferous job he's doing in keeping the country safe and all the residents as well. I would like to encourage everyone to take the vaccine because I already take it myself. But I have 2 questions for Ms. Raquel Brown tonight. As you're fully aware, Royal Caribbean Allure of the Seas is scheduled to make some stops in St. Kitts on May 30th, June 2nd, June 16th, July 14th, July 28th, and also the Caribbean Princess on June 9th and June 23rd. So my first question is, as an avid cruiser myself, how prepared are we to receive these cruise visitors to our shores? And secondly, what protocol are we have in place to facilitate these cruise arrivals so that all the visitors will have a magnanimous time in St. Kitts that would exceed their expectations in St. Kitts and Nevis? Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Good night, Jacqueline, and good night, Mr. Brown. Good night.
Good evening.
And good evening to the Secretary Denville, and good evening to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Harris. Now, my input to you, Dr. Harris, tonight, that you know that the COVID-19 is a deadly situation all part of the world, and the government tried to endeavor best to do what they got to do to curb this COVID-19 from getting to our shores of the Federation. Now, I listened to the former Prime Minister on a different radio talk show, and he said that when the talk show host asked him the question about if he ain't doing nothing about the COVID, he said that you're in your position. But what I want to tell you, Mr. Prime Minister, I know you're a serious man toward the country, and you're doing a wonderful job. You understand? How you could invite the leader of the opposition when you're in the election twice under this unity administration, and he never come and commend you and the unity government. You understand? So I want to know if you are going to be serious, because the Honorable Prime Minister, I don't know the comments he make about water and the vaccine and all those things, and like some doctor tell me that some people don't die from the COVID here, but you are keep it a secret, and those things coming from a former Prime Minister as a doctor. I believe you're unfortunate, and I don't know how the people of this country take Dr. Douglas as a serious man in this country after leading the country for 20 years, making all them ridiculous comments in spite of the government, how you are doing. The opposition never come and commend the government with the good you are doing when the country was closed down to fight this COVID from the community spread and everything. I will listen to you, happy. You all have a wonderful night. God bless.
Thank you so much for your contribution to the program. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. You're live.
Good night to the chairperson and good night to the panel. Question for the Prime Minister. Long time I don't hear anything about the step workers. Can you please give us an update on the step workers? Because some people have other jobs coming in, especially the vendors, but now vendors is out, so they need something that probably could go to the bank with the job they have, and to get a loan, because what they are step they cannot get through. So can you please get some update on that, please? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live. Okay, we don't have any additional calls at this time. We're going to respond to these questions that have been put to our panelists, and then we'll check the phone line again just to make sure if we have any calls waiting, we'll take them then. I believe that we can begin with Ms. Brown, because a lot of the questions were tourism related. And the first set of questions are in relation to getting vaccinated and how it will affect travel. So, Ms. Brown?
So the question, I think one of the first questions was in relation to having a vaccination travel card. And if we think about it at this point in time, and Dr. Stapleton Harris, our PS in Ministry of Health, can speak to this, we already have these requirements in place for yellow fever for persons who need to travel to certain countries in South America and in Africa. So at this point in time, COVID-19 is going to be with us for quite a while, we've been told. We do have to have the vaccine. Do I think it will become a requirement for travel? I do think at some point it will, but I think it's going to be a phased approach. I I think also for airlines and for cruise lines, for them to manage the spread and not to be the responsible carrier or carriers of the COVID-19, they're also going to require it, as they do for persons who are traveling by air for yellow fever. As it speaks to Crystal Cruise Line, that is specific for that cruise line. Do I think that it will happen? We will see. There are some cruises, yes, I know, that are on the schedule for May and June, not just for Royal, but for other cruise lines. I do not know if I do not foresee those really happening, for the simple reason that the CDC has not put out those passenger cruises for sale, for test cruising to go first and then passenger cruising. And it is a requirement that test cruising is to take place for a period of 60 days for them to move to passenger cruising by getting a maintaining their green status. So as we still wait, we're in March, we need to be a little bit realistic. I just don't know how soon that will happen, because the CDC and the President Biden administration has not come out and said specifically what are going to be the protocols for cruise. I just checked my phone, and the Odyssey of the Sea, which is going to set sail in Israel in May, they already are requiring for persons who are 16 and over to be all vaccinated, and they're promoting the cruise as an all vaccination cruise. So we're seeing it in different parts of the world that this is happening. So I do think it will come into play. So we do have to have the destination vaccinated. I don't think we will get blacklisted. We're a population of 53,000 between St. Kitts and Nevis. We have demonstrated that we are a leader and we are mitigating the spread of COVID-19. So I do believe, and in our talks with cruise lines, Minister Grant and myself, we have explained to them that as early as February we'd have started the rollout. Cruise, we're also a part of the Healthy Sail Panel. That is a partnership with Eastern Caribbean cruise destinations. It is led up by Prime Minister Mia Mottley from Barbados, and it is in partnership with the Florida Caribbean Cruise Line Association. And we have received some of the Healthy Sail protocols. So as it speaks to the caller that was asking what are the protocols in place, we have sent our recommendations or a review of what was proposed, but at this point in time I know they're waiting on what happens with the CDC, because the CDC is going to decide if those protocols are going to be the minimum standard. And I do hope I answered all the questions.
Yes, you answered most of them, and I believe they also asked how soon will we be ready to accept cruise ships. So in the context of what you said about the cruise industry in general and the testing period, how soon do you think St. Kitts and Nevis will be ready to begin accepting cruise ships?
I think it's dependent on other destinations in the Caribbean, and if it's not just the Florida Caribbean Cruise Line Association cruise lines, and we're looking just even at European cruise lines, I just don't know how soon, because everything depends on vaccination, and we see that the UK has the highest number of cases in all of Europe. We see that Europe also is having its own issues. So I think everything right now is dependent on the rollout of the vaccine. I think the soonest cruise line, I do hope, will be from Florida Caribbean Cruise Line, for the simple reason that they home port in Miami, or they home port in Texas, or some of them are actually going to home port in Barbados. So if the CDC does give a green light, we know that, for example, Royal Caribbean, most of their fleet has passed the first phase of the green status to move into testing for passenger cruises. So it's a waiting game, and it all depends on how we as a nation, in collaboration with our other cruise destinations, because St. Kitts alone is not an itinerary to itself. Cruise depends on other destinations on the itinerary, and the cruise lines have made it clear we must have a unified protocol in place, because you can't have one protocol for one destination and another. So it's going to be a unified approach, but I believe everything is dependent on what happens in our source markets and the rollout of the vaccination. I don't know how soon cruise is going to return.
Thank you
so much for that. And Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris, can you speak to whether or not you're issued with a vaccination card once you receive the vaccine? The callers mentioned a vaccination card if you'd have to show it to travel.
Well, I'm not sure it's going to be required for travel. What I know is that the COVID pandemic is evolving, and there are many requirements globally. In fact, if you look at the RT-PCR test, it is now a global requirement by large countries. And I suspect that based on trends and patterns, that the COVID vaccine will also be required by countries. In fact, there will soon be, it seems as though they are going towards mandatory vaccination. And so, if they are vaccinating their people inside country, I suspect they would not want anyone to enter their country without vaccination or proof of vaccination. And so we issue the card. The card is in alignment with PAHO's and WHO's requirements, with all the necessary information stamped and signed by ministry personnel to ensure the veracity of it. And so we trust, in my presentation I would have said that the card should be kept safely and securely to accommodate that kind of requirement.
Yes. And can you say if someone coming from abroad can take the vaccine in St. Kitts and Nevis?
Certainly. Certainly. Yes.
Mr. Prime Minister, a question was put to you about the vaccines that were paid for in advance, and if we'd have to sell, if we would be able to sell them to another country or give them away if they were not used.
Well, I don't think we are at the stage where we will have as much vaccines as we would like, and we certainly will not contemplate the sale of vaccines. The pandemic is with us, and it will be with us for quite a while. What we want to do is to get it under effective control, and vaccines and vaccination in particular provides the best way of doing this in a very quick way, and in a way that could bring sustainable results. So the sale of those on which we have made a down payment is not being contemplated by the government. We want to actually reach a position, ultimately, first herd immunity, and then be in a position to vaccinate anyone who enters the country and who is not yet vaccinated. We will do that, of course, as a precautionary measure, and also a way of protecting our people who are already in the country from visitors coming in who could otherwise transmit the virus. That is where we will hope to go. I want to add a point to what Dr. Harris has said with respect to the vaccination cards, or they are now called vaccination passports, becoming a requirement for international travel. That certainly is under discussion in many centers of the world at this particular moment in time. And we know Israel right now is one of the leaders in the build-out of vaccinations around the world. In fact, it has had most of its citizens, or more of its citizens per capita, vaccinated than any other country. And it is shown as a leader. It is one of those countries that are now featured in terms of reviews as to the efficacy or reliability of the vaccine, because it has done a significant portion of its population. What we do know is that India is actively in negotiation with a number of countries for acceptance of its own vaccination program. That is certificate, being used as good evidence, reliable evidence that a person has been vaccinated. And so they're having these discussions with a number of countries to which their citizens would frequently travel. because again, unless persons are assured that we are talking about the same thing when we speak about vaccination, then you will have a problem. And that is why St. Kitts and Nevis has always opted for the gold standard. And that is why we have always ensured that what we do and the type of vaccine that we have chosen would have satisfied WHO, which is a global standard, the WHO standard for vaccine. So that is where we are going in terms of our vaccination program. And the PS of Health is right. Things are evolving. When we started and we had our 14-day, many persons thought that we were not being well advised because some countries were having 3 days, no day at all, of vaccination. We saw what the result of that has been, that they became overwhelmed. They continue to face the challenges of death. They continue to see significant rise in infection rate. Who would have thought that in the short of a few months, countries that had very low rates of infection would reach in 3,000 cases of infection, because somewhere in the system, persons let down their guard. In St. Kitts and Nevis from day one, we said that we want the most effective regime because our preoccupation was on life. How do we save people from a virus that kills? For that is what the end result of it is in its worst form. And we said we will go with the most vigorous and robust programs to contain the virus, hence our 14-day. Now, Jamaica has gone 14 days. Before, that was unthinkable. St. Vincent has moved, I think, from 5-day to 10-day in a state-determined facility, and then you can do 4 elsewhere. So we have not moved because we stood by the gold standard from day one, and that has preserved us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We at this time, we have no community spread. And this is not the case elsewhere. So I want to use the opportunity to commend the Ministry of Health and all the experts who have given us very reliable advice in this critical pandemic which we are fighting.
Certainly.
Prime Minister has said in terms of whether the vaccine will be donated if not used, we certainly trust that all vaccines will be utilized by our people because there is a need to vaccinate everyone within the stipulated age range. However, if the vaccine is not utilized, all vaccines have a shelf life. And the AstraZeneca vaccine has a 6 months shelf life. And so we trust that within the 6 months period, and the batch that we possess now terminates in June, that we would have utilized that batch. And if not, if it becomes, well, we would not allow it to become expired. We can give it away to someone who's in need to some other country, and if not, it would have to be discarded. But I think the better thing to do is to give it to someone or to some country that would better use it.
Okay.
We have adopted that policy because we have donated 2,000 doses of vaccines already to Grenada.
Indeed, you made that announcement just
Yes.
yesterday. Well, we have quite a number of callers. We're going to go back to the phone lines. Remember, the numbers are listed at the bottom of your screen for your convenience. If you are listening via a device like radio, you can dial 466-2666, 662-8674, 4765 or 1-239-645-4500. We'll take our first, we'll go back to the phone lines. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, good evening, Jacqueline.
Good evening.
You are highly commended by me, Mr. Radical Culture, for the great job you have been doing.
Thank you so much, Culture.
Good evening, Dr. Prime Minister Harris. Thank God for you, for the wonderful job you have been doing at the front of the team, leading it and keeping our country where it is. And the rest of the head table, pleasant good evening to you all. Now let me get straight into the meat and start to eat. Mr. PM, I know for sure when someone is accused of something, the best thing to do is to take them before the judge and let them prove what the accusation, if it is true or false. Now, the former Prime Minister, he said that the government is hiding information from the public because he was told by doctors that there are persons who died in the Federation, in St. Kitts, from the COVID-19, Well, I think he should be taken to the court and let him prove it, because that is a lie. Because the information that we got from the COVID task force, they haven't said anyone went in any coma, much less to say anyone dead. So I think he needs to prove what he said, whether it's true or a lie. I wish you all the best. Have a good evening. God bless. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution, caller. We'll go back to the phone line. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live. Unfortunately, we lost that call. We'll take another. Good evening. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes. Good night to all the panel people. And this is a question to the health minister. I want to ask, I have severe allergies, and I want to know when will they be getting vaccines for people like myself who have severe allergies?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. She will address your question. We'll go back to the phone line and take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Okay, at this time we don't have any calls, but in a moment we will definitely take WhatsApp messages and voice notes. So if you have not sent those in as yet, you can send them to 661-5683 for WhatsApp messages. That's 661-5683 or 660-7168 for voice notes. That's 660-7168. We have the question about severe allergies, and there's also the question, Mr. Prime Minister, about step workers, getting an update for that. So, Dr. Stapleton Harris?
Okay, relative to severe allergies, I did outline in my presentation that a person is provided with a checklist prior to the administration of the vaccine. And so on that checklist, it provides the validity as well as the medical history of the person, including chronic diseases, chronic or acute diseases, as well as any allergy. And so a determination will be made based on the checklist that is provided, the information in the checklist. If the medical practitioner who is attending to the client is unsure, he or she will refer the client to his physician, his or her physician, to make further determination of the type of allergy and to proceed with vaccination, with or without vaccination. So there is a system in place whereby an assessment is done and a determination is made regarding the allergy or the condition of the individual prior to the administration of the vaccine.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Prime Minister, update on the step workers?
Well, the step workers, fortunately for them, continues to be paid regularly like all other workers of the government, and there is not one benefit that has been denied them, and that will continue. In the meantime, we are working hard. We had set up a committee to deal with the regularization of their status, and that work continues. There were two broad categories of persons participating in the STEP program. One, those who are engaged in the public sector broadly, that is central government and other statutory corporations, the port, etc. What we have done, the team has done so far, is to have done an audit with respect to those STEP workers who are working in the central government. Are these workers for real? Are they showing up? Are they performing? Has the numbers been grossed unnecessarily? And that exercise has been completed satisfactorily, as far as I am informed. The second element to complete the work will be to do a similar exercise in the private sector. And the private sector includes retail, wholesale businesses, farmers, fisher folks, all of these. There's been some difficulty in verifying the list for those engaged in farming because it requires physical visits to farms and physical check of the persons who are engaged. But I believe, I am advised that in another month or so, that program or that exercise should be satisfactorily completed. And once that is done, we will then move, as we had committed to do, to ensure their full regularization. So the work leading to the actual implementation of that promise is well on the way. In the meantime, we ensure those who are weekly every week, they receive their due. Those who are on monthly payroll, every month they also receive their due.
Thank you so much for that. At this stage, we're going to take a break, and when we return, we will take the messages we got via WhatsApp and Facebook, and we'll have the closing remarks by our panelists. So stay tuned for that. I've seen a piece of it.
Today we're at the Newtown Health Center where we've had the official launch of the COVID-19 vaccination program. We are so pleased to have had quite a cross-section of individuals who were represented here today and taking the vaccine. We had members of the cabinet, we had persons from the medical fraternity, doctors and nurses alike, and we've had quite a number of other persons from the clergy, from immigration, from police, you name it, they were all here to take their first dose of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. And so we all got our COVID-19 vaccination card to indicate that we would have taken our first dose of the vaccine. Once we come back in 10 weeks, we will have our second dose, and then once we got that second dose, then the cards would be stamped at the front with the Ministry of Health stamp, and that is to finalize that you did receive both doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. A reminder that the vaccine helps us to ensure that persons do not have severe illness or death. And so we're encouraging persons to step forward and take the vaccine. Get all the facts that you need to get. The Ministry of Health provides all of the information. The facts on the vaccine are on the covid19.gov.kn website. And so we're asking you and urging each and everyone to come out and get your vaccine. Look at the information, get all the information that you need, whatever makes you comfortable. But I can assure you that we have all taken it so far, and I'm feeling good. My arm is good. It was a vaccine, and so I'm excited about that. And so I'm looking forward to my second dose to say I'm completely vaccinated for COVID-19. And as the science continues to evolve, I'm sure we'll find more information and more benefits as to why you should take the COVID-19 vaccine. But for now, I know that since I've been vaccinated, I lower the risk of me getting severe illness or death from COVID-19. I also know that I'm protecting myself, my family, and my community. So I'm asking everyone, get the facts, and then get the vax. Today was an example that it is safe, and we urge each and everyone, when it's your turn and your stage come around, to get vaccinated. As we progress, we will provide more information as to the next stage and who will be next. And so look out for that information from the Ministry of Health. We'll keep you informed, we'll keep you updated, we'll let you know how many persons have been vaccinated, and we'll let you know when it's your turn that you can make your appointment calling 311 or any of the health centers. So go ahead, get your vaccination.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters, and at this stage we're going to take the questions that have been put to us via WhatsApp and Facebook, and we have received some messages regarding the sound coming from Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris. I want to assure all of you that the production team has addressed that, and she will try to give a summary of her last response. So thank you so much for the feedback and all the persons who sent messages indicating that there was an issue. So we work together and we will get all those issues sorted out. See, teamwork. So the first question we have asked said that they heard rumors that vaccines will be made mandatory and want to know if that is true. And then we have a question asking if there will come a time that the vaccination would allow persons to travel without quarantine to St. Kitts. And there's a question asking if we don't get back cruise ships again, can we repurpose the pier, for example, like a hotel? So we have those questions, and there was a comment put to us earlier by a caller that I overlooked, and it raised comments made by the leader of the opposition and former Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister will respond to that. So the question about will vaccines be made mandatory? Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris, I trust that is yours.
At this point in time, I cannot say that it would be made mandatory. We will look at the situation, assess how it's going, the vaccination rollout, whether we would have reached a certain percentage, the percentage that we are trying to achieve, at least 70% of the population, and then we will make determination going forward. But at this time, I cannot say for certainty that the vaccine will be made mandatory.
Thank you so much for that. And for the benefit of the person who, our last caller, who had asked about a vaccine for persons with severe allergies because she herself had severe allergies, could you just give a summary of what your response was, seeing as there was an issue with hearing you clearly?
Okay, so I did indicate that a checklist is given to the client prior to the administration of the vaccination. And on that checklist, there are biodata, there is medical and surgical data, as well as history of chronic and acute illnesses and conditions, including allergies. And so an assessment would be made of the client prior to the administration of the vaccination, and in consultation with the patient's medical practitioner, if the person who is administering the injection is uncertain, a decision will be made regarding the allergy and a determination made whether the client can receive the vaccination.
I want to thank you so much for repeating that for the benefit of our last call. I hope the person really appreciates it. I believe that they do. So will there come a time that the vaccination would allow persons to travel to St. Kitts without being quarantined?
We can't speak to that at this time yet either. Can we, Prime Minister?
I think we can look fully to the future. Things are evolving, and certainly as we get closer to herd immunity globally, then I am sure that less restrictive measures will be put in place.
Thanks. And finally, can cruise, if we don't get cruise ships again, I believe this one is kicked to Ms. Brown, can we repurpose the pier, for example, like a hotel?
I'm speechless, sorry. I think the question comes out of a lot of fear, and I understand it. I think we need to be positive that there are destinations around the world. Both the Prime Minister and myself referenced Israel. They have a very successful vaccination program, and we see cruise tourism resuming there for the Odyssey of the Seas in May. So I say, even if it was to be refurbished for a hotel, it does take a couple months for a hotel to be built. And in that time, cruise tourism would be being rebuilt itself. I don't think cruise tourism is dead. I think vaccination, and I will keep saying that and believing in it, is the key for cruise tourism to resume. And the more countries in the Caribbean that have vaccinations at above 70%, we will have successful cruise return to the Caribbean.
And Mr. Prime Minister, the comments raised about comments made in relation to COVID deaths in the country by the leader of the opposition and former Prime Minister?
It's really a pity that this has come up and that we could have such unfortunate, sour grape remarks coming from a medical practitioner and one who has led the country at the highest level for some 20 years. It tells us that we are getting the same old policy, same old approach from an irresponsible leader whose time has ended. And perhaps it may be good that we keep him where he has placed himself in the past, not making himself relevant to the constructive discussion that the country needs on such a serious matter. To make such claim really is to undermine the professionalism of every doctor that has been working so hard and the health professionals to keep our country safe. And you ask yourself, towards what end? What politics could be in that except for sour grapes? And so I really just want to say to the people to keep him in the rear view mirror. He's not relevant to the future. Can't be relevant anymore. On 2 occasions, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, having a choice, they chose to reject that kind of leadership. And so I wouldn't want us to detain ourselves in giving relevance and credibility to anything which the leader of the opposition would say. It is very sad and it is very unpatriotic in my view that a man who could have led the country for so long could have such anger and bitterness towards it, that the thing about which the entire globe celebrates about St. Kitts and Nevis at this time, our excellent management of the COVID-19 pandemic, he will try to muddy the waters. I find that very pitiable for the leader of the opposition, and I feel very sorry for him.
Before we go to our wrap-ups, given what we heard this evening about steps being taken to get the cruise industry up and going again and other areas of the tourism sector, and the cautious steps being taken by the Ministry of Health towards ensuring that we get to where we need to be to ensure everyone is safe, to what end would you, Financial Secretary, what would you say to persons to manage their expectations? Because you spoke about growth, expected growth in several areas. So what would you say to manage persons' expectations where they might be thinking that, yeah, by the end of this year, everything should be back to normal, everything should be booming, bubbling, like they say, or should we be a little bit more cautious in that area as well?
Well, from the perspective of the Ministry of Finance and generally the government, is that we are cautiously optimistic. We are not entirely in control of things that can develop, but what we do know is that we have a plan in place, and as long as we are given the opportunity, we intend to work that plan in partnership with all who would wish to partner with the government.
Thank you so much, and I think on that note, we can wrap up in the order, reverse order of the presentations that were made. So, Ms. Raquel Brown, Chief Executive Officer at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, we can begin with you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I took the vaccine because I thought it was very important for the rebuilding of the tourism industry. And I really urge all of our tourism stakeholders, we are working with the Ministry of Health to have vaccine awareness sessions next week for you to come out when we do call you, the St. Kitts Tourism Authority or Ministry of Tourism, to be a part of these sessions, to ask your questions, because we do know that not only for those who are working now, but for the tourism industry to fully open up and to have increased air arrivals, to restart tourism properly, we have to have the vaccination. So I really say to all of our stakeholders, I know you may be hesitant. I've had it for over a week. I am fine. I'm one of those who I've had no symptoms. I know some persons are side effects, but I say, just as a child, when we got our vaccinations, we may have had a temperature, we may have had some minor side effects. I say, please take the vaccine, because without it, tourism cannot rebound. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Raquel Brown, Chief Executive Officer at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. We'll hear now from the Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Hilary Hazel.
Thank you. It has been quite a pleasure being here this evening, and I would just want to continue to urge our people to be vigilant in terms of protecting yourselves, as well as delving into the creative aspects of our talents, delving into our cooperative spirit as Kittitians and Nevisians, because at this critical juncture, the country needs all hands on deck, all hands working together towards recovery and transformation of our economy.
Thank you so much for that, Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Hilary Hazel. And then we'll hear from Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris.
Thank you, Ms. Bryan. I am pleased to have presented on our vaccine rollout this evening. With several vaccines against COVID-19 on the market now, selecting a vaccine that is cost-effective, safe, and facilitates ease of storage will allow our health system to cover a higher percentage of the population as we aim for individual and community coverage and an appropriate herd immunity threshold. Given the global demand, global hoarding, and the fact that supply has lagged, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine has all those characteristics, and we are certainly taking advantage of it. The life-saving power of vaccines should not be a privilege for the few, but a right for all, especially small island developing states like ours with limited resources. We are still facing a pandemic where only the vaccines can save lives. We are offering this vaccine to everyone. I have taken the vaccine. While PAHO's revolving fund has been the leading efforts on behalf of regional countries to purchase vaccines through COVAX, we are still behind. That is why we are grateful to our benefactors, such as the government of India, to donate vaccinations to our Caribbean region. We have over 20,000 doses of vaccines in stores. We have a plan. Let us not wait. Join the movement and vaccinate. Thank you, and do have a good evening.
And thank you so much, Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health. And finally, we close with the person who holds this program weekly, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris.
Thank you very much, Jackie. I want to thank you for so ably moderating this program and keeping it at a very high level. I also want to thank our three illustrious panelists who have contributed much to the conversation we have been having about the road to recovery for St. Kitts and Nevis. I want just to remind the citizens of some statements I made yesterday when we received the supply of the 20,000 doses of vaccines. I quote, to my fellow citizens and residents I say, we have a chance to put COVID-19 behind us. Let us not wait any longer. My message is simple. Don't wait, vaccinate. Don't wait to protect your loved ones. Vaccinate. Don't wait to get our economy fully operational again. Vaccinate. Don't wait to get back to your way of life. Vaccinate. Don't wait to protect your family. Vaccinate. Don't wait to protect your health. Vaccinate. Don't wait any longer for COVID-19 to go away. Vaccinate. I know some people say they are nervous and they are concerned about vaccines. I have had the vaccine and I feel fine. So fine that for almost a week now, I've been continuing my regular hectic routine without let up. And I have no loss. In fact, I have added energy. So there is nothing to fear. But importantly, one of the senior and globally well-respected citizens of the Commonwealth, Her Majesty the Queen herself, and she is somewhere closing on 100, had the vaccine. And she said the jab didn't hurt her at all. She went on to say, when it comes to vaccine, that people ought to think about others rather than themselves. I want to agree with Her Majesty on that note, because it is not so much whether you like the vaccine, it is whether you are going to be selfless in doing what is right, in following the science, in ensure that by vaccinating you protect yourself. By protecting yourself, you protect the loved ones, your neighbors, your co-workers. All of us are in this together, and none of us will be safe until each other is safe. So on that note, I want to again reinforce the urgency for everyone to get vaccinated. We see this happening every day on TV. Just a few months ago, the indicator of how well countries were doing was on the low, the number of infections. That was one indicator. Then people began to look at how many are dead. So the United States had a terrible score, both in terms of number of positive cases and the number of deaths. Had a failing grade with respect to that. The new indicator that is coming now as things involve how quickly are people being vaccinated? Because only by being vaccinated can economies get back to near normalcy. Can people get back to work again? Because that is the only way of ensuring the environment, the space in which we are sharing, at work, at home, at our health centers, at all our community spaces, that they are secure. So, as the Prime Minister, I want to encourage everyone, all my friends and well-wishers, every citizen, every resident, to consider taking the vaccine. It is not compulsory, but it is highly recommended that you do so to signal that you are a real active participant in the efforts to ensure that our country recovers very quickly. We are on the road to recovery from all accounts, but we must continue to press ahead, and in pressing ahead, we need to get vaccinated. I want just one small advice in relation to persons who are on very low income, that persons ought to consider wisely whether this is the time for them to get involved in borrowing. One of the callers made mention of the fact that people want to go and get a loan. But is this the right time to get a loan? For what? If it is something that is avoidable, wait until the recovery is here, rather than to engage yourself into debt, and then the bailiff comes, and we know all of the consequences. So sometimes we have to learn, in difficult times even, to still try to put aside something for the rainy day. And I would want to encourage our people, notwithstanding how modest their inflows may be. If it is $5 you can put aside, put $5 aside every week. It is a good lesson to adopt. And we're going to have to be a lot more creative about how we survive in our country and how we survive as we compete with the rest of the world. So I just thought that was important, that just as the government has to be disciplined in its financial resources, we need the entire nation to be disciplined. Or else when the rainy day comes, and ultimately it often comes, we will not be able to help ourselves. Imagine had the government not over the last 5 years put aside something for the rainy day, utilize the surpluses well, we would have not been able to carry the country for almost a full year, when the revenue inflows are at their lowest level. And so it is a good message that in good times we put aside something for the lean times. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening to this program week after week. I want to thank you, those who succeed in getting their questions to us, to say a hearty thank you for all your inputs. On this program, there are no foolish questions. Every question is a relevant one because it's a matter of concern to you. And we share in your concerns, and we want to help you as you also help us to find solutions to the way forward. May God bless the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and may God bless our beloved country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And before we close, allow me to use this opportunity to wish ZIZ a happy 60th anniversary. ZIZ is a household name and helped to really lay the foundation on which the media industry in this country was built. So I think it's an amazing accomplishment. And I want to say happy 60th anniversary to the management and staff and all the past and retired employees of the organization. You have a lot to be proud of. So to you, enjoy the rest of your evening right here next week Tuesday, same time, same place. Take care. Thanks.